Welcome, everyone, to another session of the Responsible Humans podcast, where we talk about self growth, taking care of yourself, learning, creating, and helping others. Today, my guest is Stephen Bryson, who recently won the Prime Minister's Excellence Award for his teaching job. And that's one topic we're going to cover today with him, in addition to some other interesting conversations that we're going to have. So I will hand it over to Stephen to introduce himself.
Thank you, Shubham. So yes, as you mentioned, my name is Steve Bryson. I am a high school science teacher at St. David's Catholic Secondary School in Waterloo. I've been a teacher for 12 years, mostly teaching science, but some other subjects sprinkled in here or there. And as you mentioned, this year I've had the opportunity to win the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence. So I'm very, very honored, very blessed to have won that award.
Happy for you, Stephen. So let me start with why you chose to become a teacher in the first place.
Well, you know what? It wasn't a very straightforward process for me. I went to school down in the United States, down in Iowa, because I was a runner back then. I was a cross-country track and field runner, so an athlete. So I went down there for school for scholarship, came back to Canada, and really couldn't find a job that I was interested in. You know, I was applying for a bunch of different things and really couldn't find anything that was in the science field that I was enjoying. So I actually went back and did my master's degree at University of Waterloo. And while I was doing that, I realized that I absolutely loved TAing, being a TA, but I couldn't stand the research. The research was just not my cup of tea. But then I realized, okay, so how can I do this on a permanent basis? So I said, hey, maybe I'll get into teaching. And then I decided to get into teaching after that. And it's been a great experience ever since. So I kind of didn't directly go into it, but it took me a little bit of time. But then I eventually found my niche. It took me until I was in my late 20s to kind of figure it out. But I got there, you know.
Yeah, it takes a while to actually find something you love, especially in the 20s. I can totally relate to that. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your award a little bit. What went actually behind the scenes, all the work that you had to put, and was it something like, is it a competition or something that usually teachers have, or it's just
yeah. So the award usually is handed out. So I think they said last time I checked, there's around 200 people that applied for the award across the province, and it's a pretty rigorous process. So if you have someone that nominates you for this award, it's quite an honor, because I think it was between 15 and 20 pages of write-up just on the work I've done and myself as an educator and what I stand for. So I had a vice principal that came and talked to me. I guess it would be probably December 2020 that nominated me for the award. And then from there, it was probably about 4 or 5 month process, and eventually got the application in. And then I waited around quite a bit and then just heard last November that I had won one of the, there was 10 certificates of excellence that are delivered across Canada. And I had won one of those 10 certificates this year. So like I said, feel very blessed and very proud to have won that award.
That's awesome. So what do you think was your special ability in your teaching, or what did you do special that got you this?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few things that I did. Like, for example, I really do want to focus on helping my students develop skills like self-efficacy and things like that. But I think the major idea that I had that helped me to win that certificate of excellence was I started a program at my school called Innovation Week. So, I mean, I don't know what high school was like for you, but for me anyways, when people were asking me, okay, what's your plan for when you're done? Like, I felt like I knew like 5 jobs back then. And honestly, I see this insecurity in a lot of my students who really have no idea what their plan was for after they're done high school. So with this idea in mind, I was thinking, how can I expose my kids to some of the incredible innovations that we have in the KW region? So with this idea and with this thought in mind, I came up with an idea which eventually turned into Innovation Week, which has taken place at St. Mary's High School, my old high school, over the past 4 years. So Innovation Week consists of 3 different parts. So the first part was workshops. So students could, in lieu of going to a class, could sign up for a workshop in a field that they were interested in. For example, if they were in engineering, we had engineers coming in from FLIR to talk about drone development. You actually got a chance to build a drone during these workshops. But if you were more in the arts, we had people come in and talk about how to write a novel and publish your own novel, or computer programming, or just basically up to 25 different fields, any one innovation week. We also had some innovative guest speakers, aerospace engineers, forensic biologists that would come in and give larger presentations. And then there were some fun lunchtime activities. So honestly, every year we put out a survey to students, staff, and community members, and they were always overwhelmingly in favor of having Innovation Week on a yearly basis. And I think it was because students really appreciated the opportunity to kind of interact with some of these leaders in the community. So I think that was probably the main thing, the main reason, or one of the main reasons that I ended up getting this award and this recognition.
And what age group are we talking about here when you're talking about the students in the Innovation Week?
Oh, so the students that I deal with are high school students. So I'm talking about, probably between 14 and 17, or 14 and 18 years old. So, when you're 14 and 15, you're not really thinking about your future so much, right? But, my grade 11s, my grade 12s are really starting to think about, okay, what is the next step? Which is why I wanted to bring this Innovation Week idea to them, because, well, me personally, like I said, I had no idea, and it took me a while to start figuring things out. But if you have the opportunity to kind of see some of the amazing things that are out there in our region when you're in high school, I mean, it's something to shoot for, right? It's something that you can possibly strive for. So that was kind of the whole goal of Innovation Week.
You kind of get a taste of all the things that are out there that you might be able to do. I can totally understand. Yeah. For me personally, I also, until I finished graduation, I didn't have a specific clear idea on what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very common problem. Not sure, with all the things going now, everything online, it has opened a lot of gates for new students, right?
Yeah.
To test
Well,
anything.
what are you doing right now anyways?
I'm a software engineer. That was one of the
Okay.
things that was always on my mind, since I was good with computers. But I also had more aspirations always to try various things, which I'm still doing. Or never let the child inside you die. Keep trying, keep doing new things.
Awesome. That's great.
And this podcast is part of that. So thanks for sharing all the things about Innovation Week. I'm pretty sure our listeners would be interested in that. And if some teachers are listening, maybe they introduce it in their schools as well. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about was Stoicism. I know that that's one thing we have in common. In our Roastmasters group, we have given speeches on the same topic many times. So let's define Stoicism first. How would you define Stoicism for listeners who are not aware of it?
Well, I mean, I am a big fan of Stoicism, and if you want me to define Stoicism, I guess I would say define it as a way of just a way of living that really has spoken to me, and really is a method that has kind of helped put me on the right path. Probably about 5-6 years ago, I was really, I don't want to say in a really dark place, but just not a great place. I was just drinking too much. Things weren't really going well, with the family and my career and things like that. And one of the things that kind of helped me get out of that little bit of a funk I was in was someone had told me about Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Now, first time I picked up that book and I start reading it, and I start thinking to myself, this is going to be the absolute worst read ever, right? I could barely understand it. But you know what? After I kind of went through it, and I kind of forced myself, okay, you got to read this, right? You got to try to understand it. And the lessons that were coming out of that, the lessons about wisdom, about temperance, those are exactly what I needed at that time in my life. The lessons about, moderation. I mean, those are the ideas that really spoke to me at the time. And since then, I've really been a big proponent of a lot of the ideas in Stoicism. So. How about
Yeah, it was the
yourself? What?
same for it was the
Yeah.
same for me. That's how. So I was stuck in India actually in 2020 due to COVID. I couldn't come back to Canada. I went for a month, but I was stuck for almost a year. So in between that time, I was kind of lost. Uh, like what's gonna happen, right? With all the restrictions and some visa document stuff. That's when I was reading books and I came to know about from a podcast only. I came to know about the book, same book, Meditations. That was my first Stoicism book, and I started reading it. I did have to skip a lot of stuff, which, as you said, it's a little bit complex with all those Greek words in between. But most of the lessons it presents are so good. It calms your mind. I think Stoicism basically is all about seeing the reality the way it is, staying calm, understanding that everything does happen according to nature and controlling what you can control. It gives you that power over life, only the around the area that you can control. So that's I actually have read it now 3 times. It's an
Wow.
amazing book. So anybody listening, I would recommend you to check the book out, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. What I find most interesting is that it was never a book written to be published. It's just a journal of a Greek emperor which later turned into a book. Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's
So,
amazing. I
yeah,
guarantee my journal doesn't have that much insight. That's for sure. Actually, you know what? The one thing that you said that really hit the nail on the head, and I was going to actually say this now that I'm thinking about it, the one thing that I felt like spoke to me more than anything else when I first read Meditations was control only what you can control. You know what I mean? Because we have so many things going on in our lives, and for a while there, I was trying to, you hope for this, you expect this, maybe this will happen, right? But if you just focus on only what you control, I mean, it's made me a lot happier because I can control certain things, and other things I just don't even worry about them anymore. So
exactly.
great insight right there.
That's the way to go.
Yeah.
So if you would have to, let's say, not influence, you will have to tell someone to look into Stoicism. Why do you think they should read meditations, let's say?
Well, I think that it's funny because I was just at a physiotherapist the other day, and he mentioned that he had meditations and hadn't really started reading it, but he heard from his brother that it was interesting, and that he got and his brother got a lot out of it. So I would say that, in my opinion, the type of person that should be reading meditations is someone that's looking for answers, but not necessarily the be all and end all answer to life, but just answers for how to live life according to developing your character, which is something that I've really had taken a lot of pride in, something I really focused on the last few years. When I have a journal, like I said, and one saying that I've always write to myself every couple of days is, the better your character, the better your life. And this is something that I've really thought about a lot recently. Okay. In terms of, am I living up to my own expectations of who I want to be, and who I want to be in terms of, a father, a teacher, a husband, everything. So just, it helps you become very reflective. It helps you start thinking about the bigger picture, but at the same time, focusing on the day to day, not just kind of head in the clouds type of philosophy. So that's what I love about Stoicism.
And the journal that you mentioned, is that something you do upon waking up or before sleeping, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Okay, so it's something that so for me, it's no, I mean, it's right here, and usually I like to do it in the morning. Now, I normally don't do it consistently unless I'm forcing myself to do it consistently, because I know it's really good for me, but at the same time, it's easier just to wake up for me and just have a coffee and relax. But so how I focus my day and what I do during my day is, I actually have a list of habits that I have in my phone that I'll follow one after another, and writing in my journal is one of those. I think that's one of the things that I really like to focus on, just because at the end of the day, I want to look at my list and say, okay, I did this correctly, I did this, because I know if I hit my habits for the day, the habits that will help me move me in the direction I want to move in, then I know that I've had a successful day. And journaling is one of those habits, you know?
I see. Yeah, you don't want to make it into a routine. I totally can relate to it as well because I have those habits, but if you keep doing it every day, it kind of becomes mundane and it
Yeah,
loses its power. I think
for
there
sure.
have to be some down days,
Yeah.
and then you come back to it.
Well,
So,
let me ask you, are you journaling consistently or?
yes,
Yeah.
almost. I've been usually sometimes due to work or some other stuff. If I go back to bed late, I try to like I want to avoid it, but now I'm creating this habit to at least do it for at least 2 minutes because
Good.
uh, because later I have this thing where sometimes I look back on it on a weekly basis, and if I miss a day, it's kind of like I'm missing data, and you don't want to see that. So I try to do it, and I do it on my phone only. I have this old phone with no SIM card, and I just installed Evernote there, so
Okay.
I can sync it.
Nice. Oh, that's great.
Another thing I want to talk to you about is this. So you are a teacher, an excellent teacher, as a matter of fact, and then you're a parent as well, and you're into Stoicism. So one thing I have been hearing in your speeches also in Toastmasters are discipline and what would you say to yourself if you go back 20 years, right? So
Yes.
based on all these learnings, how do you deal with your kids? Like, do you try to teach those habits that you wanted at when you were their age, or you learned after becoming, let's say, stoic or disciplined?
You know what? That's a great question because you know what? So how I try to teach my kids how to live their lives is by modeling the type of behavior that I want them to have. You know, I've always felt like, and I'm going to talk more about myself as a teacher, but you know, when someone tells you, hey, this is how you should be more disciplined, you should be more, you know, it's just almost like in one ear out the other, right? So I try to model in my life the type of behavior that I want my kids to have, and because I know that it leads to successful life. I've also, you know, after I read Meditations the first time, I thought this is an awesome thing, but how do you boil it down? I mean, it's not an easy read, as you mentioned, right? So how do you boil some of these lessons down for kids? And I actually had the opportunity to write a children's novel um, about meditations. It's now I published on Amazon. It's called
Oh,
Marcus and
wow.
Me. It's called Marcus and Me, My Introduction to Stoic Philosophy. And it's about a boy who's having a little bit of trouble in life, you know, grade 8, grade 9 or whatever, and then starts using some of the lessons from meditations to start getting his act together and things start turning around. So when I wrote that book, it was probably 2 years ago. I really had my oldest son in mind at the time, you know, just as something that I could possibly give to him and maybe he'd read it and hopefully get some value out of it.
So that's something new I'm learning about you. Yep,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. And now that being said, with my students, it's a very difficult process. I find it's a very difficult process right now. The latest project that I'm really focusing on is I want to help my students develop skills of self-efficacy. Like, you know, how do you help your students develop self-discipline, you know, setting goals, etc., right? How do I do that effectively? So I've been looking at different ways. I've been using storytelling as one method. I have my own website as well that I've been kind of using to kind of put some ideas together, and I want to expose my students to some of those ideas. Now, the problem is like they might be good ideas, but how do you speak to, I mean, how do I speak to myself when I was 16 years old? And I don't know if I could have, right? Because I don't know if I was ready for the message. So my goal right now is to figure out how can I reach that version of myself, that 16-year-old version of myself that thought I knew everything and just whatever, you know? So that's kind of where I'm at right now. That's my most recent initiative that I'm doing outside of the classroom, but in the school.
That's cool. That's a pretty cool initiative. And that's a great cover. I'm checking your book right now on Amazon, and that's a great cover, I would
It'll,
say.
it'll be
Did you
it'll
design
be
it
really
yourself?
low down there. It'll be low.
No, it came on the first one when I searched for Marcus and me.
Oh, did I? Okay, there it is.
Did you create the cover yourself?
Oh, you know what? I no, that's not my picture. I can't draw, so I just paid for that picture, and then there's a few pictures throughout, but it's mostly just it's only like 70 or 80 pages long. I've seen that style of book before written for kind of like 10, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, you know, in terms of like lessons that they can take and help them in their lives. And I thought this could be something valuable if we use some of the ideas for meditations for something like this. So,
Did your kids read this?
pardon me?
Did your kids read this book?
They did. They did. So they, my two older boys have. Well, my middle one, I'm not sure if he got all the way through it, but he's only 9 right now, so I think it might be a little too advanced for him.
Early.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, so we are almost out of time. I'm
Okay.
gonna ask you if you have, let's say, some teacher, or let's say parents are listening to this, right? What are some tips that you would, let's say 3 tips? What 3 tips would you give them?
Okay. So if I'm talking to another teacher, maybe a new teacher, for example, I would say that there's lots of things that, first of all, what I love about our profession is that we have the opportunity to, well, basically influence the future generation, right? Like the future leaders of the world. And for me as an educator, there's nothing more valuable and there's nothing that I get more purpose out of than thinking about that. So as a new educator, what I would say to you is that, you know, focus on just constant improvement, constant growth in the career, and gratitude for the amazing things that we have and the opportunities that we have to play this really important role in the lives of our kids.
And one tip would you give to a parent?
One tip I would give to a parent. Well, right now, all of it, like I mentioned, all of us are home currently. Sorry, one's going to bed right there. All of us are home right now with COVID, so I would say one tip I have for parents is patience. Right? No, but it is true, right? And to appreciate it, especially if you're a new parent. For me, now that my kids are getting a little bit older, I can't believe how fast time has flown by. You know, like I have a teenager now, and I have 3 kids, and they're, you know, soon enough they're going to be in college and university or whatever, and doing their own thing. So you know, appreciate every moment and just, you know, appreciate the person that they are. So, you know, I don't think there can be anything more valuable than that. So.
Okay. And show be what you want them to be rather than telling them what you want them to do, right? That's what I got from your earlier.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we are done here. Where people can find you if someone wants to contact you?
Oh, you know what? If people wanted to contact me, they can probably, the email would be the quickest way. My email address is steven.bryson, Bryson, at wcdsb.ca. Or I have a brand new website out. It's called, you probably can't even find it on Google yet, but it's The Ladder Program, all one thing, theladderprogram.com. So if you type that in the URL, it should come up, theladderprogram.com.
I will check it out. Okay, that's all we had for today. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. And thank you, Steve, for your time.